morning, Scott.
Morning, how are we doing?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm very good.
Okay. So today we just wanted to conduct a little bit of an interview.
Mm-hmm.
We get a lot of emails from students asking a lot of the same questions, and we can get quite inundated. So we thought that we kind of just put it out there and ask the students to compile some questions
Sure.
that they wanted to ask you, and that way we can get it all over with in one lot, so everyone can hopefully benefit from listening to this and hearing what you've got to say.
Happy to help.
All right, so just to kick it off, the first question. I see heaps of unconscious moments, but I'm still not sure what to do when I see them. Do you have any advice?
Okay, so yes, we could spend all day going over the answer to this question, but to make it easy, firstly, this is the style of question that we get asked a lot, being that a lot of our trainings, our products, and everything we do is based around spotting unconscious moments. I know it's something you and Marianne get asked a lot as well, something that I do personally as well.
Yeah.
The fact that our students are actually coming to terms with actually seeing the unconscious moments is the best thing. It seems to be almost a backwards thinking when people say, I use the language patterns, I know all the techniques, I know what to do in therapy, I know how to use inductions, I know how to do all of that, but nothing seems to be working. Okay, this was the main complaint I was hearing, and something that I complained about as a therapist as well. I had all these great tools, but I didn't know how to do it. Okay, I didn't know what to do at any one point. Then when we decided to start teaching and training and certifying students, I had to take another approach to say, well, what if we scrapped all that, learnt how to recognize trances occurring, and then use all the things we've been using previously, like telling stories and, the hypnotic realities or putting attention on the unconscious moments. Why not do it at that point? So the best way I can answer this without going on and on into a tangent is the fact our students are seeing them is fantastic, because it's one of the hardest things to teach. But once you get the hang of it and you spend more time watching and noticing what's occurring with your clients, you're in a really good place. So to answer the question, the last part is, what do I do once I see them? Use these unconscious moments as if the unconscious mind is telling you, hey, I'm listening. I'm waiting for your story. I'm waiting for you to put attention on me. I'm waiting for you to interact with me. So basically what we're trying to say is, as soon as you see it, do anything. This is a great time to be therapeutic. It's a great time to use more language patterns. It's a great time to deepen the unconscious moment. It's a great time to tell your Ericksonian stories or your transformational stories, whatever you want to do. The main concept behind spotting unconscious moments is, once you see it, we need to expand it so it gets bigger, and then we just interact with it. We've used the metaphor as an unconscious moment being like a child. The child wants to play with you. It wants your attention. So you might have to lay on the ground, play with the Lego bricks, play with the computer games or whatever your children do. You're not interacting with this child and it's having fun. I view unconscious moments like that. And to add to this, if you're not seeing the unconscious moments, you need to continue doing what you're doing or do something different until you see them. Once you see them, then you create your next move into therapy. Hopefully that makes sense to answer that question completely.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. It really is a case of practice makes perfect, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. So I think that sums that question up really well.
Great.
Next question we have, I am having some good sessions working with smokers and some continue to smoke.
Mm-hmm.
Why is this? What can I do to guarantee that my clients will quit all the time?
Yes, another common question, especially with smokers. Something that tends to happen with therapists when working with smokers, and this was for myself as well, is we put so much pressure on ourselves as a therapist to get the job done. What do I mean by this? We put all our effort, our pressure, attention, and everything we have because we want our client to quit once they leave our office. And this is a great thing. If they do, it's fantastic. But what tends to happen is the more pressure we put on ourselves to perform and have the outcome our client wants, the harder the session becomes, because we miss everything we need to do, because it's almost like we're running our own routine. We're sort of saying, okay, you're sitting in front of me to quit smoking. The goal here is to quit smoking, give it up, and never go back to it. So as soon as I set my mind on working with that smoker in that direction, I'm actually going to miss all the other pathways I could take that would lead to a better success. That's one thing to consider. Another thing to consider is the fact you're getting some success and the fact you're getting successes that aren't perfect is exactly the way therapy will be. And this has been therapy for all the greats, the Ericsons, the Igors, the Bandlers, everyone like that, even for myself. We're not bulletproof. We cannot always have the success we have. We just have to make sure that if we are having some failures and some successes, okay, we don't get ourselves down on it. We don't spend our time worrying and thinking, oh my God, I didn't do that properly. Therapy's too hard. Why is this not working? We're now putting our attention on something we shouldn't, and we're in a negative mind frame. So as soon as that gets locked off in an unconscious way, it becomes a behavioral pattern. Okay, we know this through our own training. So every time you have a smoker come in, those old associations get triggered, and you'll probably find that as this student who's asked this question, if you're doing stop smoking sessions and everything's great, that's the mindset you have. As soon as you have one bad session, you'll probably notice that all the bad sessions will follow afterwards and continually go down that road, because that's where your attention's going. You're bringing in an old attention, an old feeling or an old emotion or an old behavior from a previous session, and thinking that every session's going to be the same. And through law of association, it becomes that way. So they're the two best points I can give. If I was going to add a third one, realize as well that just because your client doesn't quit then, it doesn't mean they won't quit later. There has to be some sort of reality interaction as they leave our office to quit smoking. There has to be some sort of integration the unconscious mind goes through. It might take them a day, it might take them 2 days, it might take them 5 days. We can never know. All we can do is when we go into a session is make sure we have a new session in front of us, we have a new client in front of us, and that's the way we have to treat it every time. They're probably the 3 best points I could give in regards to, successfully having a stop smoking career.
Really love those points, Scott. And I love what you said about treating each session.
Sorry, Beck, I'll have to stop you. Just speak up a little bit.
Are you there?
Yes, excellent. I can hear you now.
Sorry.
That's okay.
No, I think that they're great, really great points. And I loved what you said about treating each session as a new session.
Yes.
Okay, so the next question we have here is, I'm just wondering what modifications I need to make if I were to create a hypnotic audio program to the conversational hypnosis protocol. Mm-hmm. I've had ideas myself, but obviously our approach is very interactive, and in an audio there is no echoing or unconscious moments to watch for. So I'm keen to hear your thoughts as I want to create something to sell on my website.
Okay, so just I think this question is going this direction, and I hope I do answer this correctly. What I'm getting from this question is this student wants to create maybe an audio they can give away, or like a relaxation audio or a hypnotic thing they can give their clients to feel good during the day, maybe as a free prize or something on their website. Hopefully I'm correct in saying that. The best thing to do at this point, and the way that I did it previously, I don't spend a lot of time doing those sorts of audios anymore, but when I was doing them, is to because we can't see the unconscious moments, because we can't use echoing effect, we can't see our client going into trance, I would tend to use a lot of stories. Okay, I would tell ambiguous stories. I would use a lot of language patterns, because obviously when we're creating an audio for the masses, we can't even use our the psychological pressure behind staring into a client's eyes, so there's no pressure that way. So I'm going to use a lot of language patterns. I'm going to speak very, very slowly on the audio. I'm going to tell a lot of stories. I'm going to give a lot of metaphors. What I want to do in these stories and metaphors as well is make them really ambiguous, keep them open-ended, because I know if I leave stories open, or the language pattern that I'm using is more ambiguous, I know my client's mind will interact with it, create an ending or an end part of the story, which I know then creates a hypnotic trance. So what we want to try to avoid is using things, if we're using language patterns to say like, you are relaxing now, or you feel good now. We want to start to use more ambiguous terms like, I wonder how easily you'll go into trance, or I wonder how simple it can be just to relax. I wonder what part of you will get relaxed quicker than others. So there's a big difference between being very direct on an audio or very indirect. I like the indirect approach because it seems to work in more cases, because you're going to have different personalities listening to it and different styles of unconscious approaches to take as well. So I hope that was the question that was asked. Hopefully that answers it, but that would be my best advice in that way.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Great. So next question we have here. Hi, Scott. How do you get credibility back if a client has not broken addictions or issues after you have done a session with them?
Okay, another good question. If you recall, we talked about before just with the stop smoking question as well. This will tie into this question as well, and it might even have the same answer as well. The fact that some of your clients will leave your office still having that issue, there's nothing can be done about this. You're never going to get 100%. So that's the first thing I can say. To get credibility back, it's more we need to discuss with our clients if they're not having the success they wanted, is to discuss a process that the unconscious mind goes through in that integration process. Another thing we need to advise as well is, and this is from myself directly to a student if I was asking this question, is the fact your client has left not having the success they wanted means you probably haven't hit the nail on the head, so to speak. The session you did wasn't what the session was for. Okay, so in regards to, let's say a client comes in for weight loss and all we deal with is the weight loss, but then they go home and they're still left with the same afflictions that triggered the weight loss, the weight issues in the first place, I'm missing the mark. So what I want to do is I would probably, if it was myself, I'd get this client back in and I would pick apart what exactly is going on. If there's an addiction or there's something or a behavior they want to change, I would spend more time investigating the problem to find out what's really going on, other than assuming I think I know what to do next, or I think this is an addiction session, or I think this is a stop smoking session. Once I spend more time investigating the problem, the real unconscious truths or the real unconscious moments are going to start to come out, which will let me know what I need to work on and not what I think they should work on. Hopefully that clears that up. So that'd be the best points for that. We always have to remember that if you have failures, don't get caught in them. It's just something that I fell into a couple of times. It's very hard to get out of that. We have to always remember, not everyone gets it right. Not every psychologist gets it right. Not every psychiatrist, not even every medical doctor gets it right. We are all human. We're all human enough to make mistakes. We need to understand that making mistakes in hypnosis is part and parcel of what we do as well.
Yes, perfect. Perfect. Okay, so last question that we have here, my favorite question.
Yep.
What is the best thing, Scott, that you were told by your mentors or while learning hypnosis?
Oh, good question. It's been many years since I've had a mentor, so to speak. So to answer that question completely, what have they said that changed? Nothing that comes to mind as far as like a statement or a saying. They usually tend to come up when I'm teaching because I'm in that hypnotic mode, and they'll tend to come out of my mouth and I think, oh, I remember being told that when I was learning as a therapist. But to give some sort of highlights on how it all came together for me, I was lucky enough to spend my time with a lot of great medical doctors that were using hypnosis at the time. A lot of psychologists, psychiatrists, a lot of great therapists that are in the industry today, a lot of trainers, a lot of therapists at the time that were just seeing clients that weren't trainers. And I spent a lot of time, not so much in therapy myself, but I got to spend a lot of time picking apart what they did because I was noticing they were doing really great things. So that was one way I learnt. And through my own investigation, through studying, I guess you could say studying under these people or just spending a couple of hours with them picking their brains apart, I got to learn some pretty great stuff that I still include to this day. Okay, I couldn't tell you exactly what it is, but it's just because it's part of what I do now as a trainer and a therapist. When it all came together for me, I was very fortunate enough to get my hands on old Ericksonian VHS tapes. And this is way back when, to show you my age, the VHS tapes were the norm. There was no DVD at the time. And I remember buying a couple of VHS tapes from a garage sale from a psychologist, I think it was a psychologist or a psychiatrist. They used to live down the road from when I was living in Adelaide with my parents still as a young boy. And I wasn't really interested in anything like that. I really didn't know anything about it, but there was a box there full of tapes, full of VHS, full of playable tapes, full of audio tapes. I thought I'd just buy it. It was maybe $1 or something like that. And I remember putting in the VHS tapes and seeing Erickson for the first time. And what I saw, what I know now to be, to be so fortunate enough to see it back then, was I saw this old man in a wheelchair talking to these people. And when he was talking to them, they were going into this thing I now know as trance. So I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. And then I sat there, I got, for something inside of me said, no, this is interesting. I want to continue to watch. I continued to watch and watch and watch. And now knowing what I was watching, I was actually watching the famous Mondi tapes. So this was one of Erickson's most famous tapes and recordings that he had at the time was when he was treating a African American lady and her boyfriend through terms of hypnosis, and he was trying with all hypnotic tricks. He was doing slightly regressions. He was telling stories, and this now becomes the famous Mondi tapes. But I remember seeing at the time, getting so intrigued by and so interested, all my attention went to that. So I remember going to the library, trying to find as many books as I can on hypnosis once I learned that that's what it was. But I spent the later parts of my career, you know, watching these tapes over and over and over again. I think I've watched the Mondi tapes probably a couple of thousand times, but also listening to, I believe at the time it was a audio tape called Hypnotic Realities, where he was speaking to Dr. Rossi and his wife, and he was doing a demonstration as well. So I had those two in my arsenal, and that's all I was doing. That's all I was trying to copy what he was saying. I was writing down the language patterns. I was writing it verbatim like I was reading a script. And then through my later years, I realized that this whole script thing wasn't working for me. I really didn't click with me. I just couldn't understand how it worked. But then I realized after watching and still having access to the tape that my whole foundation of hypnosis changed. I spent so long trying to listen to what he was saying and try and follow exactly word for word what he was saying. But when I was using with friends, or, you know, eventually when I got some clients, it wasn't working the way that I saw it. So I went back to the drawing board, and this is where my mind switches. Something inside of me, you know, a light bulb went on. So at this point that said, basically stop listening to what he's saying and watch what he does. And it was I remember putting in the Mondi tape for maybe the 10,000th time and seeing Erickson again talking to his client Mondi. And within the first couple of minutes, she was already in trance. And I had never noticed that before. Now, I'm not going to reveal exactly what I saw because I think it's important for people to do their own investigation. I think it's important that if you spend the first couple of minutes watching that Mondi tape, if you can get your hands on it, this will open up your thinking in regards to hypnosis. That'll go beyond language patterns. That'll go beyond techniques. There was something he did within the first couple of minutes that changed my whole understanding of hypnosis, even up until this day. The only bad thing it did is when I went to do my formal studies and clinical and my other, I've done many training courses with some great people and, not so great trainers as well. I was so blocked because all they were saying was learn the language patterns, read the script, read this story to your clients. And that wasn't working for me because I'd already found out what I needed to do by watching those Mondi tapes and listening to the Hypnotic Realities with Dr. Rossi. I was seeing the same things repeated. So now as a trainer, and also when I was a therapist in my later years, that's all I was doing. I was spending so much time doing the same thing as Erickson did within that first couple of minutes that my sessions became so quick, so powerful, and it's still something we train today. We put a lot of emphasis, and for the students listening to this will probably know what I'm talking about without saying it. I spend so much time watching for these things to happen and noticing when they do, that's where I put my attention on, and you now have, this weird abstract version of what we know as conversational hypnosis, the way that we do it, to this day. So that's essentially how it all came together for me. I couldn't remember things I was told. I was told a lot of fantastic things from many different people, and it's all amalgamated into the way that I do things now. The one bit of advice I can give to not go down the mistakes that I do, or that I did at the time, was don't follow exactly the way that I do things. Don't spend your time trying to copy what I say or copy what the greatest hypnotists around now. Don't copy what they say. Don't try and do it like them. Be independent and do hypnosis your way. That's probably one bit of advice I could give that I know I was told. Don't know when I was told or who told me it, but I know I was told at that point that, and given that understanding, and from then, that's when things started to change. My whole mindset changed. My attention shifted from learning language patterns and learning the scripted thing and learning the hypnotic stories in the way that everyone else does it. We wanted to do something different, and I definitely did. So that's basically how it all evolved for me in that story. If that all makes sense, that's how it all evolved for me as a therapist.
Makes perfect sense.
Great.
I think that's really insightful answers to some great questions, and I think that the students will all be able to get something from all of your answers.
I hope so.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you for joining us and answering these questions.
You're very welcome.
I'll speak to you again soon.
You will. Thank you so much. Thanks for taking the time to do this.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.